This is Bay McFarland with Mary's Advocates, and our work includes trying to reduce unilateral no-fault divorce. And I have with me Susan McAuliff. And the reason I invited Susan is because she is a doctoral candidate and she is doing research on divorced persons. So, Susan, thanks so much for joining me. Now, I just posted the invitation for divorced persons to fill in your survey, and I put it up on moral injury divorced persons with a subtitle, Research Participants Needed. Can you tell a viewer what is moral injury and why how is a divorced person helping if they spend the 10 to 20 minutes filling out this survey? Oh, by the way, we're also coming at it from a Catholic perspective.
Absolutely. And seriously, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. I know we're trying to keep this short, so I'm going to dive in, but I really want to say thank you so much for having me. And from the heart to say to people, don't give up, with all of the divorce things with your Catholic faith, just don't give up, have hope. And the reason I'm doing this research is for that reason. So if we want to talk about moral injury real quick, it's been around forever. It's in research, it's kind of new, but if you think about, from the time of Adam and Eve, anything that has happened that you're either have done yourself or been a victim of or witness of something that goes against your moral conscience. That's what moral injury is. So in two words, you could say a soul injury.
Soul?
A soul injury.
A soul injury.
Yeah.
Where would anyone have heard of this concept of moral injury? I mean, is it something that's being written about that your average person would have heard about, but maybe not heard it called that? You mentioned post-traumatic stress disorder in the stuff that I read.
So, about 20, 25 years ago, moral injury became an issue in, scientific research in the mental health field. But it was usually dealing with soldiers who have PTSD after being in combat. But moral injury has been around forever. Every movie we watch, a drama, or every, book you read, especially in Catholicism, from scripture or from, all of that, it's, we have seen conflicts where it could be murder, it could be divorce, it can be relationship issues, anything that you see happening or is happening with you that goes against your conscience would be a moral injury.
Yep. I've seen lots of studies about children of divorce where there's these metrics that show, a child of divorce versus a child in an intact home. How do they do in school? How do they do with suicide? How do they do with depression? How do they do with unplanned pregnancies? There's all these kinds of studies. Are there studies like this for adult divorced persons that you know of? Or are you kind of doing something that's a little bit new?
Right. This is brand new because there are many, 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 many studies on divorce, and even some, I would say, false studies that say, oh, children are resilient and they'll just get through everything. Well, children are resilient and they survive in the moment. And a lot of what happens to us as adults, entering into marriages that end up being not so good, maybe our pickers weren't correct from a lot of childhood things. But to say that this is brand new because this is specifically for Catholics, divorced Catholics. I'm focusing on looking at faithful Catholics who believe the magisterium, all the teachings of the magisterium. I think the moral injury is going to be way higher in them because of what you go through, and you have in mind, I'm going to devote myself. I'm just going to go with a woman right now because it does happen to men as well. We don't leave the men out. But a woman, because you devote yourself to this marriage, you have children, and usually faithful Catholics have many children. The horrific thing that happens after a divorce is your identity can shift. You question everything. You have, trust issues. The pain is so much. So there are no studies on this specifically for Catholics for sure. And there are very few, I guess I would say there's no studies looking at this from a character perspective rather than a psychological perspective.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we participate in this survey, you'll be able to use our answers and you're putting it out there in a scholarly way. Like how many people? You told me you need 300 or 400 participants.
I need 400 valid, 300 to 400 valid surveys. So if you get like maybe 600 people to participate,
Okay.
because you have to you have to throw out things that are not valid.
Okay. So God willing, that's the goal, to get you
God
about
willing,
600.
yes,
And
yes.
your goal would be to have your doctorate done by December?
December. So that means in the next 2 weeks, I need to gather all my
All right.
data.
All right. That's why I invited you. Like, let's make this video now. Let's
Thank
get the word
you.
out there. And the
Yes.
thing you mentioned about women and sometimes how it affects them, what I hear from the men that I talk to who reach out to me with Mary's Advocates, especially what I would call a normal Catholic man, he really does exercise his role in God's plan as a
Yes.
provider and protector. And what
Yes.
divorce does is it rips that out from under him. So now the government is controlling the upbringing of his children. And then
Yes.
he's just throwing money into a system where he doesn't have his natural right to be a father. So I'm hoping
Absolutely.
that you get a lot of participants. Thanks for coming on with me in this video, and we'll see if we can get the word out.
Yeah, and make sure the men fill it out too, because right now I've got probably it's 60-40. And I know that I have 5 sons. Like, I'm an advocate for good men. They shouldn't be left out of the conversation ever.
Okay.
And so I appreciate that.
And
yeah.
I'm going to put this on Mary's Advocates, moral injury, divorced persons, and let's see if we can get your numbers up. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
God
bye-bye
bless
for now.
you. Thank you so much. All right.